This is Omar Nashashibi in Washington, D.C. with an update on U.S.-China relations and proposals moving through the U.S. Congress. U.S. and Chinese officials met 2 weeks ago in Alaska for the first time under the Biden administration. According to a description of that meeting that is now public, the Chinese want to deliver a very specific message to the United States. They view the U.S. and China as equals now on the world stage. This is a much different posture than when many of the current Biden foreign policy advisors served under then former President Obama. The past year, under which the pandemic has seen U.S.-China relationship dip even further than it had following the imposition of the Section 301 7.5% and 25% tariffs under the previous administration. The U.S. and China are increasingly moving towards an adversarial relationship on multiple fronts, and momentum is mounting on Capitol Hill to move legislation to reshape policy towards China. I first began lobbying on the issue of Chinese currency manipulation during the first George W. Bush administration, and at that time, the key sponsor of the Senate bill to enhance and enforce trade laws against China was Chuck Schumer, now the Senate Majority Leader, the most powerful position in the upper chamber in Congress. He has a long and vocal track record here in Washington as a skeptic towards China, particularly on trade, and he, along with Republican Senator Todd Young of Indiana, are leading efforts on Capitol Hill and in the Senate in particular on a bill that will incorporate both previous China legislation as well as new proposals that have been floating around Capitol Hill in the last several weeks. On April 14th, the Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing focused on the Endless Frontier Act. It's a bill that's focused on strengthening U.S. competitiveness and leadership in critical technologies and sectors, many of which have been obviously in the news lately. This was paired with an April 16th hearing from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the Strategic Competition Act of 2021. This is a sweeping 280-page bill focused on China that addresses issues from unfair trade practices, government subsidies, forced labor, cybersecurity, Chinese investments in the United States, and corruption over there as well. The semiconductor shortage here in the U.S. has really awakened policymakers around in Washington to the vulnerabilities in the U.S. supply chains that were highlighted at first in the early days of the pandemic about a year ago. More than 50 lawmakers, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, on April 12th sent a letter calling on President Biden to support emergency mandatory funding for semiconductor manufacturing incentives that will be part of a broader legislative package that I referenced earlier that he's aimed at China, on which he's already working. Sources on Capitol Hill expect Majority Leader Schumer to schedule floor time in the coming weeks to focus on China-related legislation. We expect that they will pass, and with bipartisan support, which is saying something in this town right now, given that there is so little of actual bipartisan action on much legislation. So we really are expecting something to move, at least on the Senate side, and China has taken notice. They have well-connected lobbyists here in town, and for 2 decades, we have seen a number of China-related bills introduced with only a handful of significant measures, though, becoming law. The Chinese government, as spokesperson for them, said on April 9th that, quote, it firmly opposes the relevant motions put forward by relevant legislators, end quote. Note the term there, relevant lawmakers. Now, that's really important because in the past, we had just seen, and not to put it this way, but just rank and file, normal average members of Congress, many of them from the Midwest, without a large national or public profile. And so in the past, China really hadn't taken as much notice, but now China certainly has. And notice again, they're using the term relevant lawmakers. They're all relevant, but in this case, you have the Senate Majority Leader in Chuck Schumer, chairman of several Senate committees, and a number of other serious lawmakers working together across the aisle to reshape U.S. policy towards China. And so that's why they are starting to see actual momentum, as we are picking up on that on Capitol Hill as well, in some of our meetings going on. On the Senate side, on the other side of it, though, we are seeing increased pressure on the Biden administration to reopen or create some type of a new Section 301 tariff exclusion process. Shortly after imposing the tariffs on China, former President Trump created a process for U.S. importers to request an exclusion from paying the tariffs. Companies could apply with a process allowing the public to object to the tariff relief. But right now, fewer than 100 exclusions currently remain in place with regards to Chinese imports, whereas thousands of goods right now are subject again to that 7.5% and 25% tariffs. The USTR has extended temporarily, roughly 99 or so exclusions that were granted and extended through March 31st. Those are now through September 30th. But outside of those COVID-related ones, we really have not seen much action as this administration reviews its current China policy. It is currently undergoing that review as well. In addition, on April 8th, as it goes to the exclusion process, 2 senators began circulating a sign-on, a bipartisan letter that is going to go to USTR calling on the Biden administration to institute a new transparent process-based exclusion system for the Section 301 tariffs. This follows a similar bipartisan letter making its way around on the House side for signatures from 4 bipartisan members of the House Ways and Means Committee. Both those letters are closing on April 16th, at which point we will see at what amount of level of support that they have received for that effort there. There are some efforts to de-escalate tensions and cooperate a little bit more with China. Former Senator and Secretary of State John Kerry is in active discussions with the Chinese over climate change, but there is no question that there is momentum growing here in Washington to take a harder line against China with a policy shift expected, with legislation possibly moving in the next couple of weeks, especially as we get some floor time put aside by the Senate Majority Leader. We will keep you posted on developments in the coming weeks, in the Senate especially, and as they advance their legislation. In the interim, please contact your CLA representative for more information.